The wilderness is a strange and captivating place, filled with unique animals and intriguing dynamics that differentiate immensely from the experiences and perspectives of most people. With the calm and simplistic atmosphere of nature contrasting the chaotic and complicated stress of the city, it seems obvious why people choose to escape to the trees for a change of scenery. Yet this intermingling of mismatched worlds can cause disturbances between the two, generating ignorant and misconceived notions. But what does this have to do with PawsPort? What does it have to do with you? With me? Well, stay around and get on board as we take a look at the reasons and story why behind PawsPort. Let's fly. The head guide and creator of PawsPort. But with a title like that, you may be asking, why did I create PawsPort? In all honesty, it's a very simple reason. I wanted to teach you all about wildlife and how we work with it. Because unfortunately, not everyone understands human and wildlife interactions, and it can lead to some pretty serious issues and uneducated assumptions. Take fawns as an example. Fawns, the baby form of a deer, spend the majority of their first days of life lying down, hidden among the tall grasses for protection. During the day, the mother doe leaves the fawn unattended in the grass as she forages for food, due to the fawn having too weak of a body to follow her. However, most unfamiliar individuals mistake this maternal absence as maternal abandonment, thinking that the mother doe has simply left her helpless fawn. In trying to do the right thing, people will often attempt to save the poor creature by picking it up and carrying it to a safer location, or in more extreme cases, just decide to take it home and nurture it themselves. Not only does this act of harboring a white-tailed deer stand as an illegal offense in Texas, in concurrence with the Texas Administrative Code, but it also puts the fawn in more harmful situation than just living on the ground would have, as captive raised deer have less of a likelihood of surviving when released back into the wild than natural raised deer do. To illustrate, a study done by the National Deer Association found that after tracking released captive raised deer, only 9 out of 42 survived over 100 days in the wild. And this is only one of many accounts of uneducated human-wildlife interactions, and, depending on the individual and the wildlife involved, it could lead to seriously dangerous outcomes. But how was I going to fix or resolve this lack of wildlife understanding? How was I going to get more people interested in learning about wildlife? So that's when I thought of making an organization, sort of like Girl Scouts, but with a twist. Having an organization with a pure focus on human and wildlife interaction would help the public learn and interact with the environment that they're locally a part of, and it would even encourage greater conservation efforts. Essentially, an organization like this would help alleviate the educational gap in the public's interest regarding local fauna and flora. But how big is that gap? Let's take a look at one of Texas's more unique native species, the Atwater prairie chickens, to help us answer this question. Atwater prairie chickens, more scientifically known as Timpanchuus cupidio atwateria, have small, round, plump bodies with striped brown and white plumage colorations that help complement and enhance their most notable features. Their bright yellow-orange combs and air sacs that encompass the upper portions of their necks. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services records that these birds have called Texas coastal prairie lands their home since long before the late 1800s. Yet, overhunting, urban sprawl, and the introduction of red invasive fire ants has led to a total population and habitat decimation for these creatures. Despite being native to Texas and having an extensive history here, how many of you watching could say that you knew about the Atwater prairie chickens before now? If your answer is no, don't be afraid. You're not alone. In a survey asking questions about the Atwater prairie chickens and their situations, several native Texans of varying ages, ranging from 16 to over 30, responded with complete ignorance, to the point that the mere existence of the Atwater prairie chickens came as a surprise to the surveyors. Out of the 9 questions asked, over 60% of all the responses came back as no, including a question that asked surveyors if they would feel comfortable in a wildlife encounter, even if the encounter ended as friendly. And that's not all. In this same survey, multiple questions asked whether or not the surveyors could identify or name multiple native species. When the results came in, most of the responses came back with only one answer, or no answer at all. Unfortunately, due to this, people are often uncomfortable with wildlife, fearing and even killing what they don't understand. A lawyer in Louisiana, Kevin Grace, points out that wildlife becomes overly targeted for extermination near urban areas due to human fear, remarking that even though it's technically our fault for not understanding, it's always the wildlife that ends up paying the price. Between not knowing or understanding to just hurting or harming wildlife out of fear, a lot of wildlife just gets a bad rap. But that's where the organization comes in. Not only would it bring attention to native and unique species, like the Atwater prairie chickens, to local populations, but it would help to redirect people's fears of wildlife by allowing them to have safe and educational human-wildlife encounters. In a study done by Marina Silva dos Santos, an environmental activist, and the help of several renowned animal scientists, such as Chris Irwin, they discovered that given the chance to have a one-on-one interaction with wildlife, participants presented greater feelings of curiosity and adoration for wildlife, instead of hesitancy and wariness than before interactions, even with wildlife that have an evil reputation. How cool is that? If all it takes is a personal interaction with a plant or animal just to make people more interested in conserving and protecting them, then why wouldn't we just make a thing just to do just that? However, you may have noticed that PawsPort is not exactly an organization, at least not yet. Making an organization takes a lot of energy and a lot of resources and a lot of knowledge that I wasn't too sure that I had or could muster right now. So to help build a reputation for PawsPort, I did the next best thing. A YouTube channel. This way, I could still provide information and the opportunity to learn. I just wouldn't necessarily be able to host human-wildlife interactions. So, how did I get where I am now? Well, this process actually started quite a bit ago, back in January of this year. In January, I mostly did a lot of planning and organization. I made a whole list of potential topics and concepts to work with and explain, along with a lot of designing for the actual logo of PawsPort. In fact, actually finding the name, PawsPort, took a couple days in and of itself. My poor little notebook had so many scribbles in it from that phase. Moving forward, February was much busier, especially the 17th of February. I still had yet to actually create the YouTube channel, the literal basis for my project. So, that night, the 17th at 10:15, I got to work. In one night, I established a fully functioning email for PawsPort, used that email to activate a YouTube account, designed both the channel's profile and banner picture, set up a recording outfit, digitized some pre-made logos and files, found a cameraman, and began the beginnings of my music intro. Safe to say, I had more progress than sleep that night. A couple days later, around the 21st of February, I went back and finished my intro music until what we all know today. Good thing I did too, because about a week later I got the chance to film my first shots for my preview. It was a lot of fun, and a lot of work. In total, to film those 43 seconds, it took about 3 hours recording to make. But all that hard work paid off as the first video of PawsPort hit the internet on March 6th of 2023. Now, with PawsPort's name out there, it was time to make some real content. So, I reached out to a bunch of different people and contacts to see if anyone would be willing to lend me a hand in telling all of you about wildlife. Thankfully, I had a friend in the wildlife rehabilitation field reach out to me and provide me with an interview to use for one of my videos.
Luckily, it's a camera and we can always...
100%.
Yeah.
Alright, it's live.
Don't worry, you will see that one soon in the channel. However, you may have noticed I hit somewhat of a slow patch in posting. These videos take a lot more to make than I initially realized, and with a lot of other things happening all at the same time, I sort of let the channel slip a bit. But with the upload of my newest video, Worm Time Springtime, I hope to start posting on more of a regular schedule. So there you have it. You now know the story and reason behind PawsPort. Although, there is one more thing to PawsPort, to why I'm sharing all this wildlife knowledge. And that's because possessing the knowledge of one's local native wildlife carries more weight than simply just knowing how to handle themselves in a wildlife encounter. It carries the weight of hundreds of fading wildlife cries echoing for the last time as they resonate into the abyss of history. Every day, around 150 to 200 species of fauna go extinct. And more often than not, they go extinct without anyone ever realizing that they died, without anyone ever realizing that they lived. Using collaborated data from the Texas Park and Wildlife Department, the University of Texas, and Rewild, they record that in Texas alone, 5 native species have perished to this cruel and apathetic fate. No longer do passenger pigeons dot the skies as they migrate to warmer weather. No longer do ivory-billed woodpeckers sit in trees where the thudding of their beaks resounds through the forest. No longer do jaguars grace the Texas landscape with their sleek spots and yellow gazing eyes. No longer do hearth hens roam the coastal plains free with the breeze ruffling their feathers alongside the Atwater prairie chickens. No longer do blanco-blind salamanders wade in creek waters within the still of the forest. No longer do these creatures exist. Without knowing how to interact with and understand Texas's wildlife, this fate will never change. In the words of Jane Goodall, only if we understand, we will care. Only if we care will we help. Only if we help shall we all be saved. Will you board the next flight to understand, to care, to help? Until then, I'll see you on the runways. Stay curious, adventurers.